Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you, and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. With that being said, my people, my bad. I had to sniff this blanket and see if it was clean. Man, this blanket is stankified. And I just laundered it too. I don't know what the work this smell comes from. So that one's going back in laundry. So yeah, darkness is first. I want to give a shout out to those who came through on the Cash App. And I'm gonna tell y'all that for this message, you probably should come through again. But again, I'm not asking for any one of you to come through with large amounts. I'd like for you all to come through with. I'd like for each of you to come through with a 1 or 2. That's it. And that is 1 is easy for you, but 2, it also gives me an idea as to how deeply my message is actually penetrating. I don't have a doubt as to the content being helpful. What I'm trying to figure out is how many people are being helped by the content. Now, this one here is about a double standard we don't need. And I'm pointing out this double standard because not only of its necessity, but I'm pointing this double standard out because of something else too. Well, yeah, it's its necessity of getting rid of it. The double standard is the double standard that tells men that if they get around and, dig out a bunch of chicks, fornicate frequently and with many different partners, then they are to be lauded for this. Whereas the women are to be blamed and cajoled for this sort of thing. I am of the view that the men and the women that fornicate ought to be corrected. However, we might need a double standard as to who can level the blame. Both of us can cast blame at the women for this, whereas only the men can cast the blame at the men. And I say that because the women are not really looking for ways to increase chastity. Women just want to be selected for marriage. They don't want marriage to be made easier across the board for adults in general in order to make chastity easier. They just want to be the one that gets selected for marriage. But if you start talking about making marriage easier for, men that are of normal height and don't have abnormal amounts of money and of normal muscle mass, then all of a sudden they start wanting to say, well, why should it be that easy? Well, bitch, why should it be available to you? And I hate to think of it in those terms, but we understand what this is. So I say to these ladies oftentimes, look, at some point, you're going to have to understand what's good for the masses instead of always trying to have it better than the next person. And there are a lot of women that don't think that marriage should be made easy. They don't think marriage should be prioritized only because the way they see it, it would benefit men. When in reality, men won't press for marriage if they don't have to. And women demand to benefit from marriage and then won't even press for it when they do have to. They don't press for it until there's literally nothing in it for the man. Then the women start pressing for marriage. And this is part of why it is I'm convinced that they act more against the interest of the men than they do in favor of their own interest. When I say stuff like that, this is why it is I say that. They can have a man, but they won't do anything to get a man. And they get older and they can't find, they get older and they haven't found a man, and then all of a sudden they're willing to say things to get a man, and they're willing to show interest to get a man, let a man know that they like that man to get him and keep him. And yeah, but you're too old for almost all of them. And when you find a man for whom you're not too old, then what do? You turn around and act like you did when you were younger, in a way that drove the men away from you and into the arms of other women. And that is because what the women are seeking oftentimes is a way for the men to seek out our own destruction and seek out our own harm. That's why I say that they're trying to act against us more than they're even willing to act for themselves. I'm not making this up or imagining this. This is how they're behaving and bragging about it. The other thing is this too, gentlemen. I'm paying attention to these women in ways that many others might not. And as I pay attention to them, because I have to be able to understand what it is that they're doing and why they're doing it, things began to come clear. And that's malice is one of them. This is how it is. And I was able to understand that malice was the primary motive. I had Razor Blackenborrough earlier narrate for me about the absurdity of these women blaming passport bros for the spread of STDs amongst these women in the States. How absurd is that? How stupid is that? And if they're blaming passport bros, remember, they're not differentiating between passport bros, passport gang, SYSBM, and IBMOR. They're not making distinctions. All of the BMPTs are passport bros to them. So by extension, they're blaming all of the BMPTs. And yet the one they're blaming by name is already not guilty of this. They may be guilty of fornication. I don't endorse that, but they're not guilty of catching a bunch of bugs, going back to the States on a visit, and then spreading these bugs. How do we know? Because the women themselves have already said passport bros are incels in the United States and Canada and whatever other developed country from which these men come and in which they're citizens. So they've already said that these passport bros are incels. And I'm going to tie this all together, so bear with me, y'all. If the passport bros are incels, okay, that means they're involuntarily celibate. Why are you using that as an insult in the first place, bitch? Well, they're able to do that because we had the double standard that a man who fornicates frequently with many partners is to be admired and there's nothing to correct, and that a woman that does this is to be cajoled and even shunned. But the two of them, you would think, are the same, and that they're doing the same thing with each other. You would think this. This is what you would think. Now, this double standard, which is in fact unfair, is still based on a reality. The reality upon which it is based is not your fault or mine. However, the conclusion drawn from it is a problem. The man that is able to do this might have a skill that he could teach other men, but here's a kicker. We've now come to realize that those men don't necessarily even have to have a particular skill. It's a look. That's what they need. And they will sit up and tell you that it's not what they say, it's how they look when they say it. Many guys who've been the most successful with women have said that being silent has worked wonders for them. Being silent, not talking to her ass. Now, I found that at times being silent has gotten their respect, but it has not gotten their lust. If it has, they've never shown it. It has not gotten their retention. It has kept respect. It has not gotten them to come to me and try to get them draws off me. And that's how you don't, I'm sorry to say that, but it didn't lead to success with women. What it did lead to was retaining dignity. And that's what needs to be taught to these young boys. Being silent around women is not going to cause them to come and try to get your draw. It's not going to make you succeed with them. It's going to keep you from failing in the eyes of many of the women because you maintained your dignity. You were silent. You said very little. What can they blame you for? It doesn't mean they're going to come after you. Because now you're silent. That means they got to spit game to you. And we know women's game is the absolute worst because they've never had to think about it. And because there is no right game in their own mind. In their own mind, there's no right game to spit. So when they have to spit it, now it's like, oh my God. Now they have to realize there is no right thing to say. He either likes me or he doesn't. And if I can't tell him, I might as well not try. Duh, bitch. That's exactly what you've been saying to the men all this time. You either like him or you don't. And if he tries and you don't like him, it just makes it worse. Now you just hate him more. He can't move up in your estimation. Except maybe if another bitch is chasing after his ass. And that's why I got to use this B word all the time. Because these are bitch games. These are not grown women's games. Let me also state this. The existence of this double standard, which we men and women have accepted, is something that the women don't like, but they weaponize it. They don't like it because of the praise that the men who fornicate get, but they still weaponize it. One, the ability of women to insult a man for being an incel is due to our acceptance of this damn double standard. We accept it. Yeah, that man is to be lauded. That woman is to be shamed. Instead of both of them being in really serious need for a correction. The two are not the same. I know that. They're not the same. But this notion that the man is to be lauded, well, that notion has already been disproven. Again, it's not about a skill that man has. Women just want to screw him. And if he's silent and he's alone with them and they're not embarrassed about it, then they're going to screw him. That's all. Now we know that's all it is. So there's not really much to laud them for. Eventually, because of the women he has already slept with, the next woman can smell the past woman on him at a subconscious level. There's actually a nerve in the nose that picks up on this. It doesn't detect smell. It just detects this. Oh, yeah. Men and women have the same nerve. It's one nerve in the nose. It's called the vomeronasal nerve, I believe. Some people call it the vomeronasal organ. I think that's some part of the brain that connects to that nerve. But there is a nerve that goes straight. It's in the nose, but it goes straight into the limbic system, a very primitive area of the brain. When a man has been digging out a bunch of women, he has the pheromones from both himself and from the women he's dug out. The women pick up on it through the vomeronasal nerve. They don't even realize they can pick up on it. So it's subconscious. But then they start going after this guy. And they won't leave him alone. And just keep on because of who he done already smashed. Now, therein is a double standard we could turn around and weaponize against them. We can pick you monogamously based on whether or not we like you. You can't even pick a man without knowing that he's been digging out some other chicks. You're the one with the double standard, not us. Don't say a damn thing to us about it. Now, we could weaponize that back against them because they internalized it. They don't like it, but they still weaponize it. But when we accept it, it gives them the ability to turn around and insult us by calling us incels. But they function there, like I said, as a sexual labor union. They shut the majority of most men out in the West. It's not that just that each woman doesn't like most men she sees. That's normal. In the West, it is that the bulk of them have an agreement on the bulk of the men that all of them are going to give no chance except to be a stepdad or to be used. some sort of arrangement none of these women would accept for themselves, something insulting to the man. They function like this collectively in the West. And this designation of undeserving is something they apply, or it's a category into which they assign the vast majority of us. So in a nutshell, they have a conspiracy. They do this. They assign us to this category. They decide that most men are going to be incels, and then therefore they insult us for their decision. They come to a collective decision and then insult the majority of normal men for that decision. And we fall for it. Because we internalized that double standard and they weaponized it. These same ladies will make fun of men that don't bet getches, and we accept that, and we might even turn around and do the same thing. If we accept that, they weaponize it. We should have taken that not by accepting the double standard, but by simply accepting the differences between us upon which the double standard was based, and then turn around and weaponize it against them. Don't say anything to us about being dogs. Dogs are loyal. Dogs are simple. Dogs are reciprocal. Don't say a damn thing to us about that. You need to say something to yourself about being catty. You chase after the same few dogs around whom you see other cats or on whom you can smell other cats. This is how you base your decisions. You don't even base them on yourselves as adults. You base them on each other like a bunch of kids. You're not even choosing as adults. Most of you are the ones that don't qualify because we have to be adults and you won't grow up. And the women know this. This is why it is. They keep on leveling charges of being inappropriately interested in those that are inappropriately young. This is why they keep saying that, because they know that mentally speaking, they're not growing the fup anyway. So by virtue of the lack of options in and of themselves. Now, in order for them to know that they're immature, they have to be capable of maturity. What does that tell you? They're capable of maturity in adulthood. They're just immature anyway. But you have to know that this double standard is a part of that. They've thought about it. They've run through a bunch of calculations in their head, in their heads, I should say, in a few seconds. But the only thing they keep on thinking about is how to weaponize them against you. So you don't understand women. You're inexperienced. You're an incel. You understand them. You're just upset because you're an incel. Either way it goes. And they go to that because we internalized that double standard. Well, you're a good dude and you'd be lauded if you could get around with a bunch of chicks. Most men can't. Almost all men can't get around with a bunch of chicks. And it ain't the men's fault. So they've gotten you to believe that it's your fault for a decision they're not prone to make anyway. But since they can turn around and reject 90 to 95% of the men that ever say anything to them and still rack up high body counts, they wind up actually being the SLUTs that the double standard cajoles and chides and corrects and condemns. And that's the real problem that they have with the double standard. They don't have a problem really except with the order of it. That's why their double standard is actually quite the opposite. When it's convenient and when it suits them. When it's time to take the blame for an inappropriate act of fornication, it's the man that must take the blame. But then when it's time to blame someone for the sex that's not going on, it's the man that must take the blame for being unattractive. And we fell for it. That's why that's one double standard we don't need. Shout out to Passport OG for doing that live stream. For doing that premiere. And also shout out to Guy Incognito for doing that, for the comments that he said, because Guy Incognito, before the premiere started, outright said that dudes can't sit up here and talk all this conservative talk and then turn around and say they smashed Brittany Renner. And he's right. You can't do that. At some point, you got to stop with this who you'd smash and stop saying that it's because you a dude and therefore you can say, no, you can't. You have to be able to look at someone like Brittany Renner, because most guys actually in real life have done that. Man, I smashed Brittany Renner. It's one thing to say that she looks the part and she looks cute enough. But in reality, most of you, if she called you up and you recognized her voice, you would think it's a trap. And how do we know this? Because she done already said she can't even get guys to smash. That is one of the things it took for her to go ahead and decide, I'm going to become Muslim now. I'm required to give her a chance as a Muslim. I'm required to give her a chance, give her enough rope with which to hang herself. But I myself do doubt the benefit. I'll apply the benefit of the doubt while I still doubt the benefit, because she won't turn off the goddamn camera and stop talking about it. My light makes the roaches scatter. No, dumbass, it doesn't. That's not what it is. The roaches, you were screwing the roaches already. You were one of the roaches. What light do you have that makes the roaches scatter? That's at least not yet. Because if you really had it, you turn the effing camera off and quit talking about this, and you would practice walking the walk, and you would give the public time to forget about your stank behind. Instead of wilding out on camera, pouring water on guys that disagree with you out in public. You got problems, Brittany. If you really were changed up, you take PJ off of child support, and you would go and learn something. Sit down in a class, learn something, and admit that you stanky, foul, funky. Until you learn to walk the walk and you don't talk the talk for a long time, like Ray Lil Black did. Ray Lil Black just got on camera, just last Ramadan for the most part. She got out the business. Now, the releases came after she was out of the business, but she got out the business herself years ago, and then for years did not get in front of her own phone's camera. And hadn't done a whole lot of talking. Certainly hasn't been talking with a bragful and a boastful spirit. Like, you, my light just makes, it's just me being who I am, the roaches scatter. No, she ain't talking like that. All she's done is say, this is how you describe Ramadan. This is how you describe that. This is how well these folks have treated me. Some of them don't think that I can be convinced of this and that I can repent, but I don't have a choice but to repent. And then you don't hear from her for another several days, maybe. And there was a woman that actually sat up and said that when a loose woman decides to really try to truly shed a reputation, her final form is that of a religious woman. Well, that's because if she's sincere, it would make sense. And she knows that. So if she's not sincere, she might as well pretend, because the insincere still pretend to be sincere. So what are they going to do? They're going to do what a sincere woman would do. But what Brittany turns around and says is oftentimes still based on the weaponization of this double standard. Still based on that. Melanie King went straight to that. You don't get none. You angry inch. You just mad because you know I never sit on it. And Melanie King went right down that path as a religious woman. She went right down that path because one man asked her one uncomfortable question about her absence at the funeral of Kevin Samuels. Right down that path. Melanie King went and tried to tell another man that he shouldn't even be trying to get at her, but I don't remember if he was trying to get at her or not. Another man, uh, she actually told, look, women don't bring peace. I don't bring peace. If you're religious, why don't you? She was able to sit up and say certain things like this because of the double standards. And she actually told a white guy, or one of the nice guys, the kind of guy that women will date, leave, and then come back to him years later after they've been ran through. She actually told this guy, women don't think like you guys do. If you talk about the things that women have done to you, a woman's not going to say, well, let me be the woman that doesn't do that. No, every woman's going to say, well, I want to do the same thing and get away with it like the last chick did. Or he's no good. And I'll get offended, actually, if you do have a boundary and you don't let them do the same thing the last woman did. She told this guy that. She sat up and said that when women hear about what other women have done to a man, they never think, let me be the one that doesn't do that. Why the hell not? If you're religious, why not? You see what this tells you? You see what this says to you? This is because due to that double standard, men have been out here trying to succeed with multiple women, struggling to succeed with one, and the women have been sitting back reaping all these efforts and the benefits thereof because we have that double standard. If we take on the understanding that it is just as wrong for we men to sell ourselves short by trying too hard to get at these broads, if we take on that understanding, then the men will stop trying. We men will stop selling ourselves short. We men will stop making these dumbass pursuits, which is already happening. You see, if you want to know what it is that makes it so important to these broads that we believe in that double standard, even when they don't like it, because they don't like the convenience of it for us. But if you want to know what makes it so important for them, what is it that makes it so important? Or what is the importance of this double standard to them? Then, well, look at what men are doing right now, which is you got men that are now beginning to shed that double standard. They're no longer just idolizing men who fornicate frequently with many partners. And they're not trying to do that, and they're not pursuing these women for that. And what are these women now saying? Bring back men who beg. No, bitch. We're going to chastise men who beg. We're going to chastise men that go through the effort. We got something to say about them. So if a man is actually getting a box from a bunch of y'all, we might actually look sideways and say, well, what the hell effort are you making? You might be trying too hard in order to get that. I mean, we're pretty sure that it involves a serious and concerted effort for you to get all these draws. So you might be inflating this sense of self-worth. Then on the other hand, maybe you don't have to do anything. And that's probably why you're getting all of this. And if that's the case, what can you teach us? If you can teach us anything. And that's actually been the question that many of us were asking. Well, what can these prolific fornicating men teach us? And finally, a bunch of personal trainers started coming out and saying, well, here's what I can teach you. I can tell you that if she has a male personal trainer, you shouldn't trust her ass. Because I'm a personal trainer and I done dug out all kinds of students or clients. There was one man that said, because I'm a personal trainer, I can't get married because I could not find a woman that, I don't know what the profile is of the woman that's not going to cheat on her husband with me. Now you would think, okay, well, if the women want to cheat with you, then maybe you should get married because they must not want to cheat on you. This dude understood that the mere willingness of a man to commit to a woman makes a woman want to cheat on him, if she's that kind of woman. But he doesn't know which one is not. All this comes about from that one double standard we don't need. Many of us men who didn't even believe in fornication at one point, decades ago, would have looked at prolific fornicating men and we would have said, well, there's still something we can learn. I know, because I was one of them. I would say, well, even if fornication's wrong, there's still something a man can learn, and it can be used to make women happy as wives. I thought that was the case. I believed that. And then years later, I began to realize that what it was is that these are just the guys that women want physically when they see them. And then years later, I found out that there was some scientific evidence to back it up. Women simply were attracted to the same few men. And even if they thought a man looked nice, but they didn't think other women were smashing him, they didn't want him. How do they determine if other women are smashing him or not? There's one nerve in the nose called the vomeronasal nerve. Look that up. vomeronasal. Now, I don't know what the vomeronasal organ is specifically. Maybe that's the nerve, but there is a vomeronasal nerve. It is one nerve in the nose. It does not pick up smell. It picks up pheromones, chemical signals coming off of other people. And it connects to a very primitive area of the brain. Do you know what makes that area in women fire up? Exposure to a man with his own pheromones coming off of him and female pheromones coming off of him, meaning he's been exposed to intimacy with another woman. That is what makes that part of the brain fire up. And that's when they find themselves drawn to this man. They are the ones that support polygyny. Now, that is a double standard that we need. Not fornication being okay for the man, bad for the woman. No, which is worse when a woman does it. But polygyny is the real double standard that we need to turn around, turn it into that. No, it's okay if I marry more than one. It's okay if I got concubines. You can't have them. No, that sort of thing is okay. Fornication, forget that. No, that's wrong if either of us does it. It's worse if you do it because, well, you said you don't need it. You said that. You act like you don't need it. But no, polygyny, that's to flip it on them. Why is that? Because now what it does to them, and you'll notice this, what it does to them is it makes them equal. And that bothers the hell out of them because really, honestly and truly, women don't quite have, in the West at least, they don't have the understanding of intrinsic equality or equality of rules and laws on people. They don't have that. Now, people could be superior and inferior based on behavior and choices that they make. But in women's eyes, people are inferior or superior based on looks, based on very superficial things. They judge men like this. This is why it is that Chantel Simone has a bunch of women she had shows that many women complaining that men put themselves first. Women start off their young lives only wanting men that put themselves first. But these are that dude. These are those dudes that can do that. Women expect them to. The women see these guys as superior, therefore expect them to put themselves first. If you and I as normal men put ourselves first, the women get appalled. How dare these inferior ass niggas turn around and put themselves first? No, they don't get to do that. Now, that's just insulting. That's jaw dropping. How dare them? We're supposed to put them forth. And these men were supposed to turn around and put themselves somewhere down low on the priority list. They were supposed to do that because they were supposed to know they're inferior because we've been treating them like that all their damn lives. And you're sitting up and saying, well, innately, this guy and I are equal. So while we don't necessarily need to be dating the same women, obviously, or marrying the same women, no, you can't do that. But nonetheless, the treatment that we should theoretically get should be equal. Not identical, but equal. The treatment that he gets from his wife should be equal to the treatment that I get from my wife, although you can't expect them to be identical because they're two different women. But no, the same women will turn around, and this is something that we've heard people talking about. Women have admitted to this. Yes, women have said, yes, one of us will treat two different men completely differently. We are not consistent. I remember my first year at Morehouse, a Spelman sister, a Morehouse guy got up and asked the question, and a Spelman woman sat up and said, "Yeah, that is very true. We will do that." And other women said, that's right." So I already got the confession from that back in the '90s, before people had recording devices on them all the time. No, I saw that. They said it, and that's when. Uh, I remember that's when I said, okay, this is not a suspicion I have. I'm the one being treated differently, not in a good way. About 5.5 years later, that was when the lady at my job in Atlanta told me what the hell it was. So if you want to sit up and weaponize, if you want to take a double standard, let it not be one about fornication per se, but let it be about polygyny and polyandry. No, polygyny is needed to be legalized. Polyandry must be a capital offense. Make that the double standard, because that is something that we can actually weaponize, not only for our benefit, but even for the benefit of good women, women that don't mean men harm. It can even be weaponized for their benefit if they truly don't mean men harm. And you can easily look at the women that have a problem with that, and you can say, your problem is that you think you're better than other women. That's your issue. You don't think you're better than them because you looked at ways to be better and you were willing to carry on those behaviors. You just think you're better than them because you. And that's not acceptable. That's what your problem is. And that's how you can tell. And that means they don't believe in equality of people under the rules and under the laws. They don't believe in the default of equality of people, men or women. They believe that superficial things make some people just better than others. And that will expose them. You think this guy over here is a better man because of more money he's got. No, our situation's better. When you think this guy over here is an inferior man because he's 5'3". No. Or you think this guy over here is a better man because he's got a chiseled jaw and green eyes. No, that doesn't make him better, and it doesn't make him worse. How's that for double standards? The ones we need versus the ones we don't need. I hope that explanation cleared it up for you. Thank you again, Passport OG and Guy Incognito. I want to thank those who have come through on the Cash App, and I'm going to tell you guys now straight, I'm not going to ask you guys to come through with large amounts from one person. Some of you have been doing it, and I really do appreciate their generosity. But my request is that the bulk of you come through with 1 to 2 apiece, because not only is it easy on you, but it also shows me, in a nutshell, how many are actually benefiting. It's a win-win for us both. As always, black heart, black mind, black out. Assalamu alaikum and black heterosexual non-select male power because they don't like it. And black patriarchy until extinction or judgment day. Again, thank you for flying with us here on Jet Black Air, where the phrase jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender justice forever.